Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our tactical breakdown series, our show in which we look at the players that have been linked to Arsenal in an analytical and statistical way with the help of some expert insight to keep you guys up to date and informed on who exactly these players are, and so that you can make an educative choice upon whether you think they're good enough for the Arsenal. In today's show, we'll be talking about Lyon midfielder Bruno Guimaraes, who has been linked with the move to Arsenal once again. A long-standing interest from the club saw him linked with us back in January of 2020, and we actually did another tactical breakdown on him back then. We were joined by Vinicius Furlan, who is a big fan of Athletic Pyrenees, who are a club over in Brazil, of which Bruno Guimaraes played for. He then transferred to Lyon and is now, of course, residing in Liga, where he's had a good 18 months to adapt to the top elite level of European football and could be in line for another step up to a club like Arsenal. Before we go into the show any further, please make sure you do drop a like on today's video and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. You can help support the channel by joining up as a member and also by voting for us in the Football Content Awards, where the information is going across the bottom of your screen now, and there is more information in the description too. But without further ado, let's talk about Bruno Guimaraes. Lyon, 23-year-old, 5'10" in height, right-footed, contract running until 2024, with a reported price of around £30 million or euros. And that has actually increased in some publications, saying Lyon may want closer to 40 million euros. In 33 league appearances last season, of which 12 of them were from off the bench, he scored 3 goals and got 1 assist and did not suffer in any injuries whatsoever, although he did have to miss a few games through testing positive during the season. We're going to be joined by Jeremy Smith, at Jeremy Smith98 on Twitter, a French football expert that I know plenty of you are very familiar with for his appearances on this show and many others, who's going to give us the expert insight on who exactly Bruno Guimaraes is and how he's got on since joining Lyon in the last 18 months.
So just to make a change from the links to Aouar, Arsenal have been linked with another Lyon midfielder in Bruno Guimaraes. And just in reading some of the articles linking Arsenal to him, I've seen him compared with Gilberto Silva, Fabinho, Iniesta, De Bruyne, Gundogan. Some of these comparisons kind of either suggest that the people writing about him have got no idea what they're talking about, or that maybe he's quite a difficult player to pin down. And actually, it's probably somewhere a little bit in between. He is sort of quite, or for Lyon anyway, he starts as quite a deep-lying midfielder, but I would say he is a sort of archetypal central midfielder in that he's a good tackler, a good robust tackler. If we're going to compare him with Aouar, certainly a better tackler than Aouar is, but is also box to box, good range of passing, less attacking minded than Aouar, less likely to sort of pop up in the final third. Cat has got a relatively decent shot on him, can pick out an assist, but he's a lot more sort of the link up player and maybe kind of sitting back in a sort of quarterback role, I guess. His first half season at Lyon, he joined in January, and so his first season was the half season that was cut short by COVID. He looked fantastic, brilliant reading of the game, like I said, a good tackler, brilliant at the link-up play, keeping everything going and almost being the player more than the likes of Aouar, who made Lyon tick. But last year, he did not have a good season, and it's the usual thing with Lyon, and again, the same thing that I've said before with Aouar, is it that he was poor because Lyon were poor, or Lyon poor because he was poor? It's kind of difficult to say, but he very much flitted in and out of games, had nowhere near the kind of influence that he had in his first season. Didn't look, when he first joined, he just looked a class above immediately, and everyone was kind of saying, how the hell did Lyon get this player? He didn't show any of that last year, but he's still young. Clearly the quality's there. He's having a very good Olympics so far. So I think he's an excellent player who can sort of either sit the deeper of a midfield three, or one of the two more forward players, or in a double pivot. So sort of relatively versatile. As I said, can add a bit to the defence, a bit to the attack, but is very much the kind of middleman. and I think would be a really good signing for Arsenal. We're not quite sure where he is from what we've seen at Lyon. We've seen the very good and I suppose the sublime and the ridiculous, but that kind of sums Lyon up in a way. So I think, in a way, I feel like he's probably maybe kind of less skillful than Aouar, but I've sort of got a little bit more confidence that he could go further in his career, just because I think he's less mentally flaky. And I would like to see him somewhere else than Lyon, because I think it would be easier to eke out sort of more consistent top performances from him than it might be from Aouar. So of the two, I would say possibly he's a better option if Arsenal are going to go for one rather than the other.
A massive thank you to Jeremy once again for helping us out with our French football expertise. As I said already, you can go find him on Twitter at JeremySmith98. Please make sure you go and give him a follow and let him know that you're very thankful for him helping us out with plenty of our shows throughout the summer. We've done plenty on League and French targets, so he's been very helpful with all of that. But what I took away from that is certainly it's interesting with the comparisons with Aouar. If we think about it, kind of, for some people, it may not seem like a sensible thing to compare the two, because it's a misconstrue of facts that Aouar is a 10, but he's not. Aouar is certainly more of an 8 than he is a 10, and Guimaraes would certainly play in kind of that box-to-box position in the same way that Aouar could, maybe in a 4-3-3. The difference is with the Guimaraes is I think he would suit a 4-2-3-1, playing alongside the other number 6/8 in that double pivot role a lot more than Aouar would in a 4-2-3-1. Aouar would, of course, suit playing closer to that number 10 position than playing alongside, say, the number 6. But it is Guimaraes who is the main link with Arsenal now. Also, a thread on kind of Granit Xhaka's contract situation. I don't think necessarily that contract situation rules out Arsenal going for a central midfielder still this summer, especially with the Thomas Partey injury situation. I think that Arteta is still very keen on adding extra quality to the central part of the midfield, knowing that we need to add there. And so I don't think that entirely rules out the move either. Before we go to your thoughts and your feelings on this, which is how we end our shows, we do like to do a player comparison as always, and we are going to do a statistical comparison between Guimaraes, Bissouma, Ruben Neves and Granit Xhaka, all of them, of course, playing in that similar central midfield role. Heat maps for all of them show that Guimaraes does, like Granit Xhaka, like to play more skewed out to the left-hand side, although he can shift between the left and right, and if capable of playing on the right, he is right-footed, but has played mainly on the left-hand side for Liam, whereas players like Ruben Neves and Bissouma have coverage over much greater parts of the pitch and have played in more variable positions in the central part of the midfield. Going into their defensive duels, he comes out very well in terms of the frequency of defensive duels he gets involved in, 10.21 defensive duels per game. These are basically their league statistics, by the way, averaged across 90 minutes, courtesy of Y-Scout, if you were wondering. 61.1% of those defensive duels are won, ever so slightly less than that of Yves Bissouma, better than that of Neves and of Granit Xhaka as well. But the 10.21 defensive duels is very impressive. Going into their interceptions, it doesn't come out as highly as the others at 3.29. In comparison to someone like Ruben Neves, very impressive with the amount of interceptions that he gets involved in at 6.01. Going into their losses, 7.86 losses with a 38.1% in his own half. Is ever so slightly just second closest to that of Granit Xhaka in terms of losing it the least in their own half. Bissouma loses it more in his own half in terms of a percentage of the losses that he does across the whole pitch at 48.1%, but only 7, just below that of Guimaraes and Ruben Neves, coming out of a very high 9.08 loss count during games, with 41% of those actually being in their own half. If we look at the recoveries and how they make up for this, what's really impressive about the 7.95 recoveries of Bruno Guimaraes is the fact that 54.9% of those recoveries actually happen in the opposition's half of the field, and something that none of the others are able to break into the over 50 percentiles for this. Really interesting statistic in terms of that, but he does come out with the lowest number of recoveries. So it's kind of a balancing act in terms of what you prefer. There's slightly less recoveries than those that he's being compared to, but those recoveries tend to happen in the other half more than his opposition in this comparison. If we have a look at the passing statistics, he comes out very well. 67.46 is the most passes on display, ever so slightly more than that of Granit Xhaka. And his accuracy is also very good at 90.5, slightly better than that of Bissouma, much better than, I say much better, it's just over 4% of that than Ruben Neves, and ever so slightly under that of Granit Xhaka, but he does break into those 90 percentages, which is really good to see. And if we look at their long passing, it's not necessarily part of his game, similar to Basuma. They don't tend to like to spray the ball as do Granit Xhaka and Ruben Neves in comparison to those two, but 3.54 long pass with a 62.5% is better than that of Basuma and Neves, but not as good as Granit Xhaka in terms of accuracy and frequency. Passing into the final third is very impressive. 10.16 passes into the final third, 82.6% pass accuracy. Granit Xhaka, you tend to see passing quite often into the final third, typically to the left back, and that's why you see it at 12.11 with an 87.4% passing accuracy there. But breaking over the 10s is really key. And this is one of the areas that I like to see him in terms of being a little bit more kind of progressive in terms of in his passing than, say, Basuma, more than double the amount of passes and a better accuracy there as well. If we have a look at passes into the box, he's exceptionally direct with the amount of passes he wants to make. 3.24 passes into the box on average per game is far and away better than everyone else on this list, and he comes out of a very good accuracy as well at 57.6, despite Granit Xhaka having a slightly better accuracy at 62.8. His frequency of those directness of passes into the box just doesn't come close to that of Guimaraes. He does like to play those direct balls, and that is certainly a positive in the Brazilian's locker. If we have a look at the forward to backward pass ratio, he is positive, but he does come out of one of the highest backward pass frequencies at 11.98, but is the second highest in regards to the number of passes he is making forwards at 18.95 per game. We have a look at the dribbling statistics, which obviously something that people want to see is technicality and the ability to use the ball when in possession. He has the second highest number of dribbles per match at 2.11, just slightly less than that of Yves Basuma, but his dribbles are more successful than the Malian midfielder at 58.1% success rate compared to the 51.2% of Basuma. And going into their progressive runs, he makes 1.87 progressive runs, transitioning that ball from his own third of the kind of defensive third into the attacking third of the opposition's half. That's really impressive, higher than that again of anyone else on our list. And if we also then finally have a look at their shooting, this is also something that I think if there's a criticism, he needs to shoot a little bit more because he's quite good at it. 1.33 shots per game on average, but a 40.7% shot accuracy is far and away better than everyone else in the comparison. Whilst Granit Xhaka does like to be known for a bit of a long shot, his shooting accuracy just doesn't come close at 28.8. Basuma's is not good at all. 7.7% shooting accuracy there, but it's just not really part of his game, despite having a fair few shots when he gets the opportunity. So my criticism there would be Guimaraes certainly needs to shoot more because he's pretty darn good at it. And that does round off all of the statistical comparisons from today's video, and certainly a player that goes, in my mind, as my number one pick for Arsenal's central midfield needs this summer. It would be a great signing, in my view, to see us get him in. The question will always be, will Granit Xhaka's contract situation have an impact on the view to sign someone like Guimaraes? But if Arsenal want to improve their midfield, then he is one of the perfect players to try and do it with. And fingers crossed maybe something changes. Let's finish off the show with some of your brief thoughts in the chat box. Half South African says, this guy is a beast, which is why I doubt that we'll get him. Lee Morris says, all these Bruno stats come from a much weaker league, so you have to take them with a pinch of salt. Now, Lee, this isn't, unfortunately, I know people like to peddle this idea that Liga is an easy league. Liga is by far and away the most physical league of the top 5 leagues, in my view. Certainly it's a great transitional league in terms of kind of the more defensive-minded players. It's also why you see players like Gabriel do quite well initially when he transitions into the Premier League and stuff like that. But it's really not as far of a drop-off as people claim it to be. If you actually look at Liga last season, it had one of the best title races of all of the leagues across Europe. The improving teams in that league are great, and the quality is definitely improving too. And they produce so many good players. So the slander that Liga gets is certainly misplaced, and you should show it some respect. Ramper says, I like Guimaraes. I'm just concerned about how difficult it is to get a deal done with Lyon. And Lyon do tend to be, with Jean-Michel Aulas, to be very shrewd negotiators. And certainly for me anyway, are quite tricky from the outside perspective to get deals done. He does like to get a good deal for his players. And even with the financial situation of Lyon, which is not good at all, you can imagine that he'll want to get top price for his players should it be Bruno Guimaraes, Aouar, or anyone else for that matter. Jahan says, from your stats, it just shows that Neves would almost be the same as a Guimaraes, except for the dribbling and shooting. And even then, whilst Ruben Neves doesn't have the frequency of dribbles, he is still technically good. He's technically better, in my view, than say, a Basuma, and he works himself out of those tough situations really well, and his passing and defending stats are great. And if he aren't going to go for a Guimaraes, I think Neves would be a good option, as would Basuma. I'd love to see us go and sign Basuma. I think they're all really good options, and it frustrates me that Arsenal aren't pushing for any of those options, even though they seem to be available right now. That's the biggest kind of frustration for me that there is out there right now. Yuta says, why do you think Camavinga is out of Arsenal's reach? He is not that expensive since he only has 1 year left on his contract. Just simply because I think there are bigger teams that he'll want to move to is a priority. That's why he's out of Arsenal's reach at the moment. So there you go. Let's scroll up a little bit more. Greg says, Partey's injury underlines the need for an additional midfielder. We need Guimaraes. James says he sounds like an upgrade on Granit, but I don't think that the Cronkies have the financial ambition to purchase him and offer Granit a new contract. Again, we don't know what the financial situation is with Arsenal this summer. It seems very coy. 1 minute it's £50 million for a centre-back, which is a position that I was surprised we spent so much on. We still don't know what's going on with the forward line and in midfield. So it's going to be a bit of a waiting game. That is for sure. Interestingly, we will certainly be looking at this one with great amount of detail and seeing how this deal progresses in the coming weeks as the transfer window reaches its close. If you have indeed enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on the show and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on if you never want to miss a show. This isn't your last show of the day. At 8 p.m. tonight, I'll be joined by Next Generation Arsenal to reveal to you a brand new show focusing on the Arsenal youth. We'll be bringing you a show every single month, letting you know how the youth setup has been getting on. Players like Kido Taylor-Hart, who has, of course, just signed a brand new contract, Miguel Aziz, Charlie Patino, all of these young guys giving you a monthly update. And we're going to kick it off by talking a lot about following Balogun, Aziz, and how they might step up to the first team this season, looking at some of the young prospects like Charlie Patino, Catalan Kurjan, etc., and how Kido Taylor-Hart's future may change. And Arthur Okonkwo as well, who struggled a little bit in pre-season, but is still certainly a highly rated goalkeeper amongst everyone at the team. So join us at 8 p.m. UK time for all that information, all that good stuff as we open up a brand new series on the channel. See you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.